Greetings. Welcome to the Dragon Con Urban Fantasy Track Lost Girl Revisited Season 4 discussion. We are going to have a lot to talk about tonight. And I did, when I posted this link on the Facebook page, told people to make sure to bring tissues. And I hope that all of you have been able to do that, or at least have some handy. And now that I say that, it's I don't have it. I don't have any myself, so whatever. But we and here we go. We're going to put Renita on screen. Hi, Renita. It's always good to see you. Thank you for joining us. So, as usual, our first order of business is to have you wonderful panelists introduce yourselves. And Sarah Rose, you're up first.
Hey, I am Sarah Rose. I'm a geek enthusiast, basically. Big Lost Girl fan and a big crier. So this season was kind of hard for me.
Yes, indeed. Kevin.
Hello, folks. My name is Kevin Batchelder. I am Carol's second here at the Urban Fantasy Track. Longtime DragonCon attendee and panelist, and love talking Lost Girl, although it's going to be tough for some parts of this one for sure.
Now, and I will say that it was because of Lost Girl that Kevin first got in touch with me. The first year this track was formed, when when they were figuring out which shows belonged where. Well, Lost Girl is obviously urban fantasy, and so when the word leaked out that show was going to be mine, I had this email from this very nice gentleman I'd never met before, but who was very interested in helping me in any way that I needed, and that he was a big Lost Girl. Anyway, what I wanted to say, though, is that a lot of times people contact you, and this happens to all of us in our lives, and they say, well, if there's anything I could do to help, let me know. What I want to say about Kevin is that he did actually mean it. And the second thing is that I have taken him up on it since day one. So, Kevin, thank you. And Lost Girl, thank you. Marks.
Hey, I'm Marks Pyle. I'm a author, filmmaker, podcaster, and big urban fantasy, and also just love watching and reading urban fantasy. So this is definitely one of my top favorite shows. Sorry, not as good as Buffy and Supernatural, but besides,
Oops,
those are tough to beat. But
it's on the list, right, Max?
It's on the list, though. Yes.
Yes.
And this was definitely one of the saddest. The moment we're talking about when Rainer died. Oh no, is that not
right? Spoiler alert.
No,
yeah, really, yeah. Anybody who hasn't actually watched the whole season should not be listening to this.
Sorry.
Spoilers abound.
That was pretty amusing.
But it was a very sad moment. We'll talk about it soon. But anyway, so
yeah. Well, even that was that one was a little bit touching, but not quite as tough.
Yeah, there's a lot of touching,
Yeah, exactly, there was.
Well, we're talking about Lost Girl here, so of course.
She is a succubus.
That's right. All right, and Carol.
Hi, I'm Carol Stokes. I am also geeky pop culture-y. I'm with Marks on Buffy and Supernatural, and then I love Lost Girl. I'm the co-host of a podcast, so get this, The Lore of Supernatural Fan Fiction, and as Ellis Colton, I am an romance writer.
So as you can see, everybody's very accomplished. So,
except for me.
Well, no, you're very accomplished. And people probably know that they can see you on many different tracks at cons. So now you guys know what the first questions are going to be. But you only get to pick one. You got to pick a favorite episode, and maybe one. Well, because they're short seasons, and I want to give everybody a chance to, and just because someone's already picked your favorite doesn't mean you can't too. And because you might have a different reason for it being your favorite than they do. Now, if they take all your reasons, then I can't help you there. But don't feel as though you can't, bring that up. I will tell you that I would prefer people not go into too much detail about some of those significant things that happen, simply because they will be their own discussions. You can, if those were one of your favorite episodes or one that you hated, you can say that, but we don't want to get too far into discussions about those particular events until it's time, if that's okay.
Mhm.
If that makes sense. All right, Sarah Rose, you get to go first. Favorite episode, and was there one that you said, yeah, I really didn't, this one just didn't do it for me?
Favorite episode, Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
That was my favorite episode of the season. It just really, it showed the spirit of Lost Girl, I think, the most in that episode. Like, we got the action and we got the silly, we got more Bruce, you know. It was just I really enjoyed it. But I also, shocker, I really liked the interactions between Lauren and Dyson. I know, right? What? But like I thought that it was great, and I'm a big Tamlin girl, so in general I liked Tamlin in that episode. My least favorite one, I'm trying to remember. Okay. End of line, and I think we can all guess why don't I like end of line.
Yeah.
People eating.
Oh yeah, that was pretty gross. Yeah.
The blood eating, but still. That's the reason. That's the reason I did not like End of Line. Overall, I really enjoyed this whole season. And I think, but I think that one, it just kind of also felt a little displaced. I didn't know if we really needed an explanation on the zombies and that whole storyline thing. So I can't remember the name of what they call them. Revenants.
Revenants, yeah.
Yeah. But where they're coming from. But
Okay.
that was my least favorite episode.
Kevin.
For the favorite, I think I will go with Turn to Stone, episode 4. Strong Kenzie Bow episode, of course, not a surprise for me. Kenzie coming clean about her Fey magic source, if you will, and making the two of them making up later in the episode. Even Tamsin growing up, getting her wings. It's a really, to me, episode I enjoy quite a great deal. I'll also just add the opening scene from Groundhog Day.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember when that originally aired. Oh my gosh.
I remember when that was in the season trailer. I remember that. That's all I'll say right there. And then I think it was at a DragonCon panel when we found out that filming location was across the street from a school, of all things. So.
Oh yeah.
Take that for what it's
I had
worth.
forgotten that. Yeah.
And I normally don't pick a least favorite, but I will this season only because it kind of gets some Buffy parallels for me, and that would be Waves, episode 410, the one with the mermaids.
Oh yeah.
Which to me reminds me a little of Go Fish from Buffy, both in content and also the fact that unfortunately it came right before some amazing episodes that were right after it, so it just makes it not look quite as good as some other stuff.
Yeah, that's so funny that Kenzie's reaction when I mean it's
mermaids.
Dyson's horrified. He's like, it's worse than this, and this, and then when he says mermaids, and then Kenzie's on the phone, and she's like, "Oh my god!" I mean, it's
like fake girl mermaid out. Yeah, no, definitely.
Their two reactions were hilarious.
I think it was like sparkly seashell bra wearing.
Right, yeah. Not quite what you're going to be getting. Yeah. All right, Marks. What about you?
Well, those are all good episodes. I guess if I was going to pick one, maybe number 7, Le Fay Epoque.
Yeah.
I think I pronounced it right. I really like the whole flashback, and not only get to learn a little more about Dyson's past and how he first met Trick, but also the added layer of some of the actors playing different kind of characters and stuff. So Kinsey as that bartender was quite good, and and Lauren can sing French. I don't know if that's a real actress voice or not, but but that was a fun angle on it, and I like that world building stuff, and I teased that in there. And so
Yeah, and we
fun
now
episode.
we know where he got his nickname.
Yeah, that's cool.
You know.
Yeah. I didn't have like a completely unfavorite episode. If I was going to have to pick one, I probably would pick Waves, like Kevin, because it felt a little too light and a little too Buffy-ish, especially that late in the season. And then because you had that as one storyline, the other storyline was the whole thing with the Wanderer, the flashbacks, which I found kind of like, it's kind of underwhelming. So it was a weaker episode compared to what was getting ready to come.
Okay. Maybe that was it. They were trying to they're trying to put us into a lull before dumping this other stuff on us. I don't know.
Get ready to cry. You might
That's
as well
right.
Laugh now.
Not just cry, bawl. I'm
Right,
gonna be honest.
right.
I started bawling.
You cry some
Anyway.
pearls like those mermaids.
That's right. All right, Carol, what about you?
So those were my two favorites, both La Fay, the flashback one.
Right.
The French one.
Or the part of this in French, yeah.
I've been saying it all week, and all of a sudden I'm like, how do I say it? In Groundhog Faye. I am both a sucker for actors playing different roles, and so like watching Bo be Dyson and everything. It was really well done. And I'm also a sucker for the time loop thing. Also a Buffy flashback there for me, Mark's with when she has to do the mummy's hand.
Oh yeah.
So I really enjoyed both of those episodes. And you just feel like the actors are having such a good time. And then you get drawn into it with them. I was not wild about Destiny's Child. She goes back on the train and we see all this stuff about Raynor. And so here's my confession. I was not wild about this season overall. And the whole Raynor thing really didn't work for me. And so I didn't like this whole episode where it's all about her and Raynor finally talking. And then at the end, she's like, yeah, you're my destiny. And I just was like,
I kind of felt like that didn't have like enough, like they could have used like another episode in that to flesh out that story if they wanted us to care
'cause
about
it
their
just seemed
connection.
really fast where she's all of a sudden like,
I'm
Dyson,
in love with you.
and who? Let me sleep with this guy. He's my new, and not in the sense of like I'm a succubus and I'm doing what I need to do to survive, but in the sense of like, these two people that I love so much, they don't. Bye, and
I'm gonna choose a side for this dude.
I just wasn't wild about that, and that episode in particular seemed to really bring all of that to the forefront. Where I'm just like, I don't really, I was looking forward because the whole buildup to the Wanderer, I really enjoyed. The little clues here and there, and she'd hear the song in weird places, and the card would turn up. I really enjoyed all of that. But then when we finally met him, it seemed really anticlimactic to me.
Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, probably. But I do want to say that here, Renita is saying that she did not like End of a Line because of the zombies and Hale. And it was the zombie aspect. Yeah,
they were drinking the blood. Ugh.
Yeah, that
the
was
drinking of the blood. That's really. Yeah. I mean, obviously, the end. As I said, I bawled at the end of that.
Well, we will get there. And you guys just make sure you have your tissues handy. Okay. Well, now my next question is about the different relationships on the show. We've talked about this for every season so far, simply because the relationships between the main and even the characters who come and go but are in it a lot, they the relationships between some of these people they just evolve over time, over the course of any show. If they don't, I think people kind of lose interest a little bit. But was there one relationship that you found most intriguing this season? And if so, if there was one, what about it most appealed to you? It can be a relationship between any two of the characters. And Kevin, you get to go first.
Well, no surprise. I'll pick Bo and Kenzie again on repeat every event we do.
I will always choose you.
I will always go there. No, I think this season too, because we saw lots of ups and downs.
Right.
Bo had started to make some serious movement and choices as far as trying to find out about, everything. Her father, why she ended up dark, everything that goes there. And in some points, their relationship was strained or certainly distant, not as close as it had been. And that was kind of hard to watch as a fan of it. So watching some of that happen with Bo not around at the beginning of the season, more emphasis on Kenzie, and even Kenzie and Dyson together as a couple, apparently, while things were playing out. So, and then towards the end, as we know, with what happens to who and how it impacts Kenzie.
Right.
And also, I very much this season saw, a lot of movement in their relationship, just more galvanizing how close they are.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes the distance or the problems make it all that much more meaningful when they come back together. And I think there was some of that going on this season. Mm-hmm. Marks.
Oh, that Rainer and Bo. No, these they make Lauren and Bo look great.
Buddy, but Lauren, that's our shirt. Remember?
Yes, that's right. That's right. So I would say, besides what Kevin picked, I would say, I guess, even though despite the very sad moments, I do like that some of the episodes with, Hel and Kenzie. So there were some good moments there, some tension, in the first episode where they forgot everything and
right,
yes. together, or were attracted to each other. And but then, him trying to get the nerve to tell her the truth, and all those cute moments that they had together. So and him, those things.
Yeah,
and defending her despite whatever happened was very valiant. So
him taking advantage of the time loop to get to try to make sure his game was on. That that was
pretty bad game, actually.
Yeah, it was. It was like, come on,
which is kind of funny, isn't he? Kind of like he at least acted like a player when he in early seasons.
I guess not whenever he needed to take off his shirt, and that would have done it. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know. I know a couple of times she did say, "Put those away. Put those away." But yeah, I think that for him though, he does make the point or the comment to her that I've never done this with someone I really cared about. And I think that's why there was the emphasis for him on trying to make sure that, whatever he was going to come up with, whatever his approach or big speech was going to be, that it worked out right. And because there were a whole bunch of
bad ones. Yeah.
That's for sure. Okay, Carol.
I really enjoyed the interactions between Dyson and Lauren. Mm-hmm. They've kind of reached this new level where they're not actively resenting each other. They're not actively competitive. Right. They've both kind of accepted, we both feel the way we feel. And instead of tug of warring over it, they kind of more unite because they know, first of all, that's better support for Bo. Like, they both love Bo. Bo is their first priority, and therefore they can present that united front to, bolster her. like their energies are better spent elsewhere. There's
Right.
mysterious things going on. Why is Bo dark? Blah, 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 the Wanderer. And so instead of, bickering at each other, they're facing outward to deal with those things instead. And so they find this kind of detente. Of course, especially love the scene during Groundhog Day where they're upstairs drinking with Vex.
Oh yeah, that was.
And like all this stuff is happening, and apparently they're just like it doesn't affect them because, of course, they never ate the little, the little gummy candy.
Right. They didn't take any. Yeah.
And so they're just upstairs, but they never come down because they're just like drinking and all this stuff. And that to me really was just a great example of them, excuse me, moving on to this better plateau. I've choked myself up by talking about it. And also united in the fact that they're very distrustful of the Wanderer, the fact that Bo is dark.
Right.
Sorry, I really choked.
Well, we don't want to.
So I really enjoyed seeing them transcend the negative aspects, and instead we kind of got to see them more fully fleshed as people because of it, because we didn't just see them descend into we got to see them be more fully present and active with everybody, and especially with each other.
Right. Okay. I agree. I enjoyed watching that relationship a lot as well. Sarah Rose.
Well, I was wondering which one of mine Carol would take, and she took the one I didn't want to talk about, so that's fine.
Glad to oblige.
For me, I'm gonna say Tamlin and Kenzie was my favorite of the two, especially at the beginning when we see baby Tamlin growing up, and like the big sister aspect that Kenzie takes with Tamlin, like growing up and stuff like that, and you really see it, and like at the end, which I'm not going to get too much into the end, but you see Tamlin and like her heart breaking because of Kenzie, like that, like just kind of felt like that little, like the bow on that, like it felt real, like not just like Kenzie trying to help Tamlin so that she would help her find Bo. Like I felt like they had a legitimate, like real relationship, real friendship, whereas before Tamlin wasn't a very nice person to Kenzie.
Right.
So
well, I think that, and it was funny in the beginning when Dyson brings her over to Kenzie. Kenzie's like, I'm not babysitting, but then it's like, well, where else are we going to put her, for now? And so it kind of grows on her, and she's actually quite good at it, So, but it was, I did enjoy seeing that relationship grow too. I thought that was fun.
And it ended up being important, like like her growing up, like with her, like the hair thing, like we that actually played a role into later, like episode about what's his face, the guy I don't like, the druid guy.
Yeah,
Massimo.
I'm terrible with names. And like him, his first fate at least. And like, but she was like, not even a broken hair, like not even one, like, and stuff like that. So I thought that was interesting. And then baby Tamlin wearing Kenzie's clothes, and I just thought it was funny. and
At first she's like, wait a minute, that was funny. And she's at first she's annoyed by it, but then it's like, oh, okay.
Yep, exactly.
Now, Marks, this was something that you actually kind of alluded to with the Waves episode, but I think that the show still does a pretty good job of, including some kind of mystery or creature of the week. Now, we didn't get quite as much of it in this season because they had, speaking of Waves, bigger fish to fry. But they, they when they do, it usually serves to expand the world even a little bit further because they're typically introducing, some kind of fae that we haven't heard or seen yet. And do you enjoy those episodes when they do that? And if so, did you have a favorite this season, even though there weren't quite as many of them? And Marks, you get to go first.
Oh, different monsters or one?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just when they, when they have an episode where they do some kind of a mystery they're trying to solve for, a client, or when they or just something where they introduce a new type of fae into the world. Sometimes they have, bearing on what's going on in the show, like with the Revenants. Although one could argue they may have done that just to be gross, but at the same time, but then we've also got the the mermaids,
Mhm.
which the main purpose of that, was probably to build out some of the world building as opposed to the overarching, story of the season. But I'm just wondering if, how do you feel about those types of episodes? Or even if they're just parts of episodes this season in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I like those kind of episodes. They're kind of the monster of the week kind of formula. I like whenever you blend them together, where you got the main storyline and that mixed in. Didn't have quite as many this time, and so I'm trying to struggle a little bit. I mean, they introduced lots of fae, but they weren't centerpieces of mysteries as much as in other seasons. I mean, I guess like the opera singer,
Right. Yeah.
Alkonost, I believe. So, that was interesting. George Takei is his name.
And the oh my reference, I'm like, I
that
couldn't
was
remember
hilarious,
if he said it, and I was like, say
Yeah.
it, say it, say it.
They had to do it. They had to.
Yeah.
But I guess the one that stood out the most was Krampus. I always like a good Krampus storyline, I guess. It was it's a nice time loop plus Krampus kind of thing. And the crazy Willy Wonka, dark Willy Wonka factory was interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess
And
that
a little
was,
scary, yeah.
and they mentioned other things. I mean, this is a different kind of holiday and a different kind of twist on Krampus. And what was not Rudolph? Was it Yule, right? Or
Yule.
Yule.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was interesting. Actually, well, yeah. And then actually, I guess
Don't steal mine.
never mind. I will stop. So, but yeah, I do like those. I do like that they choose lots of different kinds and they do different twists on them. And they also choose stuff that's gods and other stuff. They're very liberal on how they want to apply fae races.
Right. No, well, and that will be coming next season as well. So, okay, Carol, what about you? Are those something that you typically enjoy? And what about this season?
I do. I really like how it just continues broadening the dimension of that world. That it's not, because in the very beginning you could think, well, it's just kind of this. Well, no, it's just like, the box just keeps going, like Trick's box that was holding his blood. It just keeps opening and there's just always more. And so I really like that. Even when I don't like the monsters themselves, like the crows.
Oh, yeah.
I did not like the crows at all, but it was very interesting that they were there.
Right. And none too bright.
I'm sorry.
And none too bright either.
Not very bright. No.
They're very clumsy.
Which is kind of too bad because I think in real life crows are very smart, but these were not smart crows. But it was just this whole interesting thing. And I really liked the opera singer. Just the fact that she had this very particular talent and what the talent did and everything, and the way it then wove into the whole story, where she's the one who then presents Bo with this thing that Bo trained Bo had told her to do and everything. And present day Bo is like, oh my gosh, but she's trying so hard to save this lovely ethereal fae, unsuccessfully, and so that kind of thing was great for moving along the story, giving us another dimension of fae-dom, and they don't always win, so it was a loss for Bo, and we had to see her struggle and deal with that loss, because sometimes the good guys don't win,
Right.
and you have to have that, because otherwise it's like, well, they're always going to win, so why am I going to bother watching this? But it gave it a real note of depth to the world as well, that they suffer losses, and the losses are painful.
Right.
I really wish they did more of that bat race that was in that episode, the Mayan ones, because they were like, they had these weird steampunk things. I'm like, there's a story there. We need some more of that.
And that's where fan fiction comes in.
True, yes.
Okay, Sarah, Rose.
Well, I'm actually gonna say the crows, but not for the thing. I do like the monster of the week for the most part. Like sometimes they're gross, and people eating, and I don't like that. But for the most part, I like that format. But I am gonna say the crows, not because I particularly like their version, but crows. There were two specific callbacks to Norse mythology in there, which is Hugin and Munyan.
Right.
In there, they're actually ravens, which I think is interesting because crows are not supposed to be smart, and ravens are. Like typically, at least in my experience, they that's how they're categorized. So I thought that felt fit well. I loved seeing that callback to stories that I love, and I love seeing those two characters like get intermixed with things, because a lot of people don't. They're one of the, like, they're not the Lokis of mythology there. But so I really enjoyed those. I liked seeing the mermaids because I felt like, even though I didn't like that episode, I'm gonna agree with Marks on that. I didn't like the episode as much. I thought that was like the one thing they were missing. Like, if you're going to do monsters and like fae, mermaids are big. They're important. I mean, especially for the age range they're going for. I mean, the uh we're the Little Mermaid generation, so where are our mermaids?
Right.
But but I will say that I do enjoy that. I kind of wish that they would have looped back into there, like we were talking about that train episode, and where I was saying, like, we could have used another episode. I would have loved to see them put another episode in there where we go back and we see her talk to the opera bird, and kind of lay those tracks out a little bit more, because I think that would have helped not only the story, that part of the story makes sense, but I also think that would have helped us care about Rainer more. But anyway, but yes, back to the original question. I I do like the episode of the week, and monster of the week, and I think my favorite were the crows, purely because of their names. So, and the costumes were really cool. So
yeah, they did. Yeah, it was so funny how Bo and then Dyson and Lauren ended up getting rid of them. That was funny. Kevin, bring us home with this one.
Yeah, I mean, and I've said it many times. For me, my love for Lost Girl is in the relationships of the characters, not so much the storylines. Not that I don't enjoy the Fae and some of the other stuff. So, and as things evolve this season into a lot more things happening for our characters. As you all have said, there weren't as many creatures of the week, if we want to call them that. And everybody's mentioned, some of the ones that were interesting and all. So I don't really have anything other there than maybe interesting to see a little more of the Valkyrie situation with Tamsin and the rebirth. I mean, that's kind of going to lead into a lot more in the next season, but good to start seeing some of it now.
Right. Yeah, and here we have a comment here from Renita that she likes always seeing the different creatures in a fantasy series and how their mythos may change and or expand, and it does, and and also the way that it affects the rest of the story. It's not something that is all that easy to do, I think, especially if you have a situation where you've got a series that's ongoing, and so you've been building up along the way. You're picking up steam because everything gets a little more intricate because you've already got what you've built in the past, and then you're trying to stick in, oh well, let's go try doing stuff with mermaids this week and see how we can fit that into the whole. So I think it has to be kind of challenging, but I think when it's done well, as a viewer myself, I appreciate that.
And I gotta imagine it's probably very hard also because they're dealing with, in some respects, characters or things that we've grown up and we love, and so they have to do them right. Like they have to,
Yeah.
or otherwise they're going to get a lot of blowback from that. And especially when a series is by this point in time as popular as it was. I mean, it would not have gotten to this point if people weren't watching it.
Right.
So, people, all eyes on them to make sure that they're doing these things right. And so I think that that's important too.
Yeah, and kudos to them for not going the easy route. Like we've only had a vampire once, and that would have been something that would have been easy to lean into if you wanted.
Well, and they could have easily done that with the Revenants, like made him a vampire somehow. Like I could see that. Like, of course, dead blood, but
But they chose not to.
That's not an Anne Rice thing. So
Now, something else, and Kevin kind of alluded to this, or some things that he said made me think about this. That this season, the tone was a bit darker, and that is even if you don't take the deaths into account. I think that kind of seals the deal for us, for anybody who's invested in the show and the characters and has been watching the whole time. But I think that that just overall the season had that darker tone, and I wanted to ask you guys, how did you feel about that? I mean, did you, aside, and do you agree that even if it hadn't been for the deaths, which we will talk about soon, that, do you agree that it does indeed have a darker feel to it this season? And Carol, your turn to go first.
I do agree with that. Of course, the obvious thread is that Bo is dark. Bo is now Dark Fae. We've had 3 seasons of her being jubilantly and boldly unaligned, and even people who didn't like her respected that. That she had been able to stave off both sides and choose her own path. But now she's dark, and that she's not happy about it. She is not happy about it. So we have, all through the season, we have an unhappy Bo. Why am I dark? Why would I ever have picked this? And then what happened to me, because now I don't even remember these things, and strange things are happening, and people are telling me stuff, and I don't know what happened and why. So all of that, I think, does set us off in a dark direction. they're pursuing this whole wanderer thing, and what is that going to lead to? So everybody's a little like, the dark clouds are on the horizon. We're not just like, hey, we won this one because we killed them and we saved the person or we freed the person, or Faye, whatever the being.
Right.
And, and let's go to the doll and have some drinks. There's really like none of that in this thing. We don't really even get to see Bo having fun, happy sex, so the whole tone of it is definitely darker. And, Kenzie, bouncy, bubbly Kenzie, is weighed down by this whole, I want to be Faye, but I'm not Faye. And now I'm doing fake Faye stuff, but then that's not working. And now, I'm being blackmailed and, beleaguered by this guy, my supplier who wants money. And so she's under the gun. Lauren and Dyson aren't happy because neither of them have Bo.
Right.
And they see her with this guy and she's cast them aside. And we don't even see Trick around very much, because Trick is often good for a little dry humor, and everything, but we don't even see Trick as much. And when we do, he is really unhappy. He's like, bad things are coming, and, secrets and blood and yada, yada, yada. So nobody's happy this season, like, at all. And so it does all add up to a big old ball of darkness.
A big old ball of Well, Sarah Rose, how do you feel about the big old ball of darkness? Or agree that it is?
Well, I definitely feel like the season had a darker tone to it, but whether or not it overall felt darker, I'm not as sold on that, because I still think that we had some of those happy moments, some of those like Lost Girl, like romping type stuff. I mean, I'm gonna go back to the Groundhog episode. I mean, we did see Bo at least make out with Tamlin, like typical, like make out. Just, well, they're not gonna remember it anyway, type thing. But but even that episode did have a darker ending to it. Like, I mean, like, with Tamlin feeling guilty and in all of that. But there's definitely a darker feeling, like a darker heart to it. Like, it's sadder. I don't know if dark is the right term for me, at least. It's a sadder season, not just because of the deaths, but because of just everything everybody's going through in, like, this strained relationship between Kenzie and Bo. And then, like, as you said, like with Dyson and Lauren, like they finally have come together and been like, we both love Bo and we want her to be happy, and kind of coming to that conclusion. And then not having that then not having her pick either one of them, that was sad. I also want to say we did see her and Dyson have a romp as well at the beginning, in the boxing ring. But other than that, like, sadder episode, dark, definitely darker towards the end, not including the deaths. I mean, the whole thing with and I cannot remember the name, and me going on about mythology. It started with a B. I just literally lost the episode. The horse dude.
The
Therapist. But I think it's felt sadder than darker. Like, because when I think dark, I kind of think scary.
Oh, I definitely was thinking dark, much more like depressing, not joyful.
Okay.
And like Groundhog Faye, I think was a real bright moment in the season. And it's like, it's that season midpoint. And I think they did that to give us a break. Like,
well, we got to see funny tricks that time. We got to see really drunk funny
Yeah, we
trick,
got
you
to
know,
see
which was
some
like,
fun, and Bo is like so funny when every time she's waking up in the car and she's like, "Oh my god," you know.
Not
I
again.
mean, that was a real a side moment not pertaining to the big storyline, and so for that reason, and it did have that lightness, but it was much more of a standalone moment than anything more thematic
yeah, but
that
in
we
the
got
end,
to
it did play a role because ultimately, like the whole funny bit between Dyson and Lauren
Mhm.
ultimately is what ended up with her getting the bottle and
Mhm.
therefore finding Rainer. So like it was an
Mhm.
important episode. I'm not disagreeing with you being like, no,
Mhm.
Carol, you're wrong. I'm just saying, like, for me, and now that I understand when you say dark, you mean depressive. Yeah, we're probably on the same. I just didn't feel like it felt dark as in scary or
Yeah.
like evil, spooky.
I guess my just for clarification, since two people still need to answer the question, I'll clarify a little bit. I don't mean either of those things particularly. I think I don't mean depressive, and I don't
The
mean
lighting is not as bright as as it was.
well, no, but this is a good thing to discuss, just because people can have you know, differences of how you interpret things. But I think of the darkness as being just kind of this feeling, I guess, that it's not really gloom, but it's something kind of akin to that, that kind of
Impending
it
doom.
kind of hangs over the whole season, I think, and kind
Mhm.
of it has an effect on things.
Oh
But
yeah.
you can interpret dark any way you want. But I, to me, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Kevin, what about you?
See, for me, the word that I think of for it, rather than dark or gloomy, is that it was a much more serious season.
Yeah.
We spent a
Legit.
lot of time, as many shows do in their early seasons, kind of having the fun or kind of, you know, if you will, romping around on some things, whether sexual or otherwise. And we certainly have plenty of that here. But, you know, I just felt it got more serious because, I mean, for 3.5 seasons, or certainly 3+, as a viewer, you're very much grounded in the fact that Bo is unaligned. And now all of a sudden we find out she's dark. What? You know, what's
Yeah.
going on there? And as a viewer, you're kind of in a different spot and you're not having as much fun with a lot of the episodes. We're looking at the serious side of things. I mean, much like when you get to Buffy season 6 and some other things, it's the reality of characters evolving and growing, relationships evolving, growing, getting stagnant sometimes. So it was just a serious season for me in that sense, I thought. And then throw in, you know, the effects at the end of the season of character loss, multiple character loss. So it's as a viewer, it kind of challenges you. You're not watching it just to sit down and smile. You're looking at people characters you care about, and they're going through some tough times. So it makes it harder to watch.
Right. And you have to be I think you have to be invested in the whole, you know, to be able to say, okay, I'm going to stick it out with these people and, you know, hang in there through some of those things. And
Yeah,
that's
you want to see them come out the other side is what you
right.
want to do.
Right. Okay. Marks.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit darker. I don't think it was as big a shift as like in season 6 of Buffy was. Also in Buffy, like everybody was making mistakes and stuff, and they staggered some of the things and that were happening here.
This isn't a Buffy panel, Marks.
I know, but
Oh no, no, Marks.
They all are Buffy
they're all
panels.
Buffy.
Marks has my
I know
permission.
that's why I'm giving him a hard time.
Anytime.
Okay, I'll
Anytime
mention
he can bring up Buffy, he brings up Buffy.
I'll mention
Buffy
Lost
had
Girl on the
not
next
been
Buffy
around,
panel.
this show would not exist. So that's I firmly believe that.
Yeah. But I
was going to bring back a theater reference, but never mind.
I do think I think we start seeing it getting more serious and slightly darker in season 3. So it's not as big a shift in season 4. But it is, I think there's stuff they tap danced around that they hit more direct this season. like with Kenzie's family life and how that was, with how apparently how really bad the Blood King was in some of those flashbacks. He was not a very nice guy, very
Right.
cold-hearted. And that was the most cold-hearted I think we've ever seen him in any of those flashbacks. At the Unamens, right? Were pretty darn dark and doing lots of creepy Inquisition stuff. Even just like little side things that I think in previous seasons, if they had happened, Bo would have noticed and how somehow done something to do something for justice. Like with the Dark Fae wedding thing, they killed a bunch of people, and they just kept going along doing whatever and stuff. Like, oh well, nothing we can do about it or something.
Right.
Or don't really notice or something, and I feel like in season 1, Bo, she would have been a lot more confrontational and about it. So there was darker stuff besides what happened in near the end. So it was interesting to see it go in that direction. I still think it's, so far, season 3 is my favorite, I think, but season 4 is probably my second favorite, maybe overall. Even though I'm not thrilled about certain things, but I just feel like they've refined, at least in some of these episodes, some of their stuff, their story stuff feels kind of real and makes you tear up a little bit. Anytime they can make you laugh or tear or whatever,
Right.
it's good.
Who's
good stuff.
tearing?
And when you can
Not
do it
me,
in the same
or you
episode.
get allergies,
Right, that's right. You got, yeah.
No one's
Well,
ever ready for the Unamens Inquisition.
Yeah, they upped the stakes considerably this season. Now, Renita or Kevin, Renita agrees with you. So, and Renita has a good question that I want us to get to, and I have one that I want to ask first before we get to the really sad stuff that we're going to need our tissues for, the ones that I talked about bringing but are down the hall. One thing, and this is a couple of character specific ones. Well, let's go with asking Renita's first, actually, and that is speaking of Trick's secrets. Did they ever reveal what type of Fae he was, with his blood being so powerful? I would think they would have mentioned that, and that's a good question, and I don't think that has ever been actually discussed.
I kind of always felt like he was kind of like some kind of elf or something like that. I'm going to be honest.
Well, his power is obviously his blood, but being able to rewrite the future. But I don't think it's ever. Does anybody, if you specifically remember it ever being up until this point? I know it hasn't.
Plus, he's the only one. It's not like other Fae where it's like, there are other succubi and there's other of this and there's other shifters, right, but there's only one Blood King.
Right. So yeah,
whatever he is, there's still something that makes him completely unique. And,
Well, it's a good question. And it's actually something that had occurred to me before when I thought, well, I wonder, if they're ever going to bring that up. And I mean, I've seen the whole series, of course, but I don't recall that it gets addressed, later on either. So, but thank you for that question, Renita. Now we're all going to be,
I'm going to do some research.
They're aware of looking for what kids.
And now my next specific question has to do with something that I noticed in my first viewing of these episodes. And I've seen them more than once, but then I know that at least it occurred to me in subsequent times. There are two different times. This is to do with Hale. There are two different times, at least, in this season where after he uses his power, that he has blood, his ears bleed a little bit. And one of them happens about halfway through the opera singer episode. And then the other one is in the episode right before he meets his end. And what I remember wondering about it at the time, and I really like to find out if you guys have some kind of take on that as to, what do you think that was it an indication of something? I wondered if it was an indication of maybe him becoming more human, because of his relationship with Kenzie, or you know,
Mhm.
do you? I'm curious what you guys think. And Sarah Rose, you go first.
I actually almost brought that up on another answer. So you and I definitely noticed the same thing. But for me, I took that as, when right after that happened was right after the opera singer sang her death opera. And Kenzie says, "You weren't hit by this, or were you?"
Right.
And that's when we kind of see like this foreboding, like dun dun dun, and
Right.
like, and his ear starts to bleed, and he kind of says, "Of course not," as he's so like for me, and then after he uses his powers to save Kenzie, again his ear starts bleeding. I kind of saw that as kind of like um a a foretelling of his end.
Okay.
Okay, more than anything, because like he did get um both him and Kenzie both got hit with her death opera. Okay. Um, and not to spoil next discussion, both of them hit their end by the
Yeah,
end of
right.
the
That's a good
season.
point. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess for me, I always kind of saw that as like it was telling us that something was going to happen, and that was just the physical reaction of her death opera, as I'm calling it. I don't know for sure what it's called. Um,
The
but
Death Note, I think, was what they called it in the. Is
yeah,
that the same
the
right?
Death Note, I think anime. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
but no, I think that that's what I saw is like they heard it. There's no escaping it. They all
Okay.
died. And then we saw it the next time we saw Hale have the reaction he had was right before the foretelling of what
Okay.
happened to Hale. And I don't want to start crying. So
Well, you better get yourself girded up for the next question then. Kevin, what about you? Did you have any other thoughts about what that might be?
No, a little bit as Sarah was saying that it was just foreshadowing something that the writers never eventually went to. Instead, we had a much more dramatic
Right.
situation with him. I just thought it was one of those things we were going to eventually learn something. As you said, he was losing his power, or his power was taking too much out of him, or something of that nature was eventually going to be a plot point potentially. But that's the only thought I had on it.
Oh, okay. All right. Marks?
Yeah, I thought the same thing that Sarah was thinking with the Death Note. I was kind of wondering if maybe if they didn't kill him off, then maybe he would go deaf from that, because he seemed like he couldn't hear right then, and that's why he got sneak attacked, backstabbed.
Oh,
So it'd been interesting if maybe they were thinking about making him go deaf, because it would be ironic in a struggle to be a siren you can't hear. If he had continued on another season, maybe I don't know, but that Death Notes, don't mess around with it. I don't know how Bo didn't get affected by it. It's interesting. She's like stuck around, like, yeah, I'm jamming this.
yeah, right. So, yeah.
It's a lot of
Okay.
chi.
well, she had like the little like the song thing from her, so like that could have protected her or
Oh, could be,
something.
yeah.
Oh, that's true. She could have, it could have been, well,
Like a
she didn't have it
talisman.
yet, did she? The woman hadn't given it to her yet. It was,
Oh,
she gave it to her as she was dying.
oh, that's right.
I guess, yeah.
Well, we've seen the Bo's got extra, like, little extra juice in her.
Extra
Every
lives.
once in a
Yeah,
while,
a
Well,
she's
little
she's
like,
the
something.
queen, or
yeah.
the Dark Queen.
All right, Carol. What's your take on Hale and his bleeding ears? Anything?
I just felt that because we'd never seen him use his power so strongly before.
Hmm.
Especially at Kenzie's house, Kenzie and Bo's place. I mean, he's pouring himself into that, and up until like those couple of instances, we have just seen him kind of coaxing people into things, or maybe staving them off a little bit, like just to nudging them enough to get them to drop the weapon or whatever. And here he was killing them with the power of his sirenosity.
There's
And,
a new
we could see the force of it because we've always just kind of seen this little whiffly wafty thing. And here it was like, the cone of death being forced into their brains. So I just felt like he pushed himself so hard that he pushed himself kind of into beyond his own well-being limits. And, especially to try and save Kenzie, he didn't care. He was going to do whatever it took. But it took so much out of him. It was like almost beyond his capability. But he did it.
Yeah.
He
What
did
he
it
usually did.
regardless, and not caring that it was too much for him.
Well,
So,
here, Renita seems to agree with you. She said the first I watched, I thought his powers were rebounding on him as a consequence of the extreme use of his powers. So, and
then once afterwards, that moment where he can't hear because he's drained. He's just drained.
Well, and I think that explanation works if you're talking about just the time that he did use his powers on Massimo, but the fact that the next time was that he was just in the presence of some really strong ones. But so it wasn't anything he did to himself inadvertently, but it was just something that I remember. When I witnessed it again, I remembered that I had wondered about it before. If KC ever comes back to con, I'll have to ask him what his take on it was, and I will. So Kevin, don't let me forget it. Okay.
Up to that panel and remind you, Carol. How about that?
Okay, there you go.
No, and one thing before we get to the sad stuff, I just thought about the fact that Kenzie falls in love with him and he's a siren and she has this thing for mermaids because because sirens and mermaids kind of
that is funny. That is funny. I hadn't thought about it that way before.
I literally was just thinking about it like his siren powers. Oh wait, she has a thing for mermaids, so it makes sense. Anyway, sorry.
No, that's okay, but that's a good point. I hadn't really thought about it. All right, people, we gotta get to the sad stuff, and I guess
we're gonna miss Massimo.
Yeah.
And Rainer, man.
Yeah,
Rainer too.
sad.
Yeah.
He was so
sad.
That one joke you said one time.
But
he was pretty to look at.
Which one? Rainer, you mean?
Rainer.
Oh, okay. Well,
the actor who plays Massimo is very good looking, but he has that swarmy thing, and I'm just like,
yeah.
Very different presence than Doc Holliday.
Yeah, very different. Yeah, and the guy who Kyle Schmid, who played Rainer, he actually was in an adaptation. I think the show was called
Blood Ties.
Being Human?
Blood Ties.
Or Blood Ties?
Blood Ties. No, it's Blood Ties. That was the first book. Yeah. It's it's based on a series of books by Tanya Huff, and the show had a couple of seasons, and it was a good show. And that's what it was called. I was like, is it Blood Price or Blood Ties? Yeah, because it's based on a series of books, and Blood Ties is the first one, so they named it after that. And he played one of the leads in there. So check that out sometime. You might enjoy that. He was quite good in that. But okay, I guess one way I'd like to approach this is, of the two that we lost, two main characters, one which was part of the heart of the show, as we should say. And I mean that, I'm not trying to be funny, but I mean that seriously. And I mean, I considered Hale a main character, even though he wasn't in every episode or whatever. But notice how they did talk about him a lot, even if he wasn't in an episode. But in any case, which of those two deaths surprised you the most? Which I mean, just and I am going to let all of you answer it before I talk about my reactions. But Kevin, you get to go first on this one.
Gee, thanks.
I know.
I thought you were going to say which one impacted the most, and I'm like, we can just skip Kevin on that one.
Yeah, no, I
we
know
can
which
do
one
there.
impacted him. I had to console the man, so I know. Yes, I know which one it was, but that's not. But it affected you the most and surprised you the most are not necessarily. They're not the same thing.
I
And
know.
so-
I was just, I was
Yeah.
saying I foresaw your question wrong because I was going to make a joke.
Well, I mean, you have to, from a story point of view. I mean, Hale's death was just shocking,
Yeah,
unexpected, totally out of the blue. You know, fill in all those phrases there. You know, I mean, knowing that Massimo had the twig,
right.
you know, and it appeared that Hale had killed him, and there was still part of me, or I'm sure for many viewers, like, oh, he's not really dead. Now, whether I thought he was going to literally stand up and stab him to death, no. So that one certainly is the one that spooks you or catches you off guard, and
Right.
therefore, but the fact that as a viewer, not only the death, but having to watch Kenzie's reaction to it.
Oh yeah.
So you
Oh.
have another character you care about, and you're watching them have to deal with that. And to her betrayal of Bo not, you know, using her magical powers to try to bring him back. I mean, just pushes that character even further into darkness. And then, so therefore, come the end of the season, her choice to save her friends by giving herself up just makes even more sense, because she's even more aware of loss and how it can impact people. So she can choose to try to, you know, save them that way. So it was quite a 1-2 punch in the way it was done, I think, story-wise. Like we've talked earlier, whether you call the season dark or heavy or serious or whatever, you know, you throw in a couple of losses like that at the end of a season, and it's just a 1-2 punch.
It really was, yeah.
Takes your breath away there. So, and that's what's interesting, I think, as a viewer, you know, even all my Kenzie love aside, I mean, as a viewer, making you have a shocking death and then to have another death that you can kind of see a character making that sacrifice for, but still losing that character and knowing the impact it'll have on others. I mean, kudos to the writers and the show and the actors to being able to pull that off and make us feel things for, you know, characters. To the classic, it's more than just, quote, a TV show.
Right. Okay. Marks.
Yeah, I think that Hale's death, to echo some of the stuff Kevin said, is definitely the most shocking. I think at that moment I was thinking, because of the raw brutality and moment of Druid, of Massimo attacking Kinsey, I kind of thought Kinsey was going to die in that scene, and then they shifted around and suddenly like, oh, never mind, you know, he's going to be saved, and then I don't know, just how they did it was really well done. That it was shocking and surprising. I mean, logically, you think he's a reoccurring actor technically, so that would be the most obvious person to kill, unfortunately.
Right.
But it just never saw it. I didn't see it coming, and the buildup was just so raw, and it was much more real feeling than a lot of stuff. I mean, from a lot of my favorite urban fantasy shows like Buffy and Supernatural, have had a lot of deaths that really suck. But I have to say that the way they did the scene, the way they built it up, and then, and most importantly, the way that Kinsey reacts to it and the actress brings that emotion to it just makes it feel so real and raw, and definitely one of the most, shocking deaths that I've seen in urban fantasy. They aren't just trying to be gross or something, but emotionally shocking. Um, and then of course it just made it even stronger when Kinsey dies. When Kinsey dies, it's not so shocking because it feels like we've seen it so many season finales when a character, I must sacrifice myself, jump in this portal or do whatever, and they try to leave open the window of like we could save her somehow, maybe, in a quest. So that's not as worrisome. Obviously, she's such an important key element that like I have not seen the last season yet, so that's what
You've never seen it?
I've never seen the last season of Lost Girl. I've been meaning to catch up to it, and I've avoided all
Wow,
spoilers.
no, I'm looking
So-
forward to next month.
Yeah, so I'm very curious to see how it goes, and how it shakes up the dynamics of it. Because even with Bo gone for one episode, it shook the dynamics a little bit. But Kinsey being gone and her dynamic with it, I don't know. And then Hale too on top of it. But anyway. So Kinsey's death is extremely sad, especially added with Hale, but it's also kind of a traditional scene that we've seen before. And then I've seen countless times Supernatural, usually people coming back to life.
Right, yeah.
And then, but Hale's is something that I haven't seen as much, and that was just it shocked me. It was surprising me how affected I was by it. So that was really good storytelling.
Yeah, I agree. Carol.
With Hale's death, I gasped because I did not. I was prepared for Massimo to not be dead because Hale turns his back on him, and that's always the thing. If you turn your back on the person you think you killed, they're not dead, right? So
Yeah,
I was
double tap them.
Don't go into the house thing on Harmon. He's like, no, don't go into the dark alley.
I just thought he was going to get up and attack again. I did not expect him to, stab him through the heart from behind. And so that was really, for me, that was the shocking death. Last episode, I felt all along that that's what was going to happen, and it almost made it even sadder because I knew it was coming. And the whole way I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And, and so it was more impactful grief-wise for me, but not a surprise,
Right,
kind of
right.
moment. Whereas Hale's was just like, boom.
Yeah, and
And yeah.
Renita said, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very gaspable,
Gasp-worthy.
a gasp-worthy moment. Yes. Sarah Rose, what about you?
Well, if I have any superpower, my superpower is my ADHD superpower of understanding patterns and seeing foreshadowing. And so that in and of itself, I wasn't surprised either one of the deaths, to be honest. Even originally, like I kind of saw Hale, like they're not going to let them like go be happily ever after, especially once he asked her to marry her. The writing's on the wall here. But that being said, the most gasp worthy, the one that made me like a big puddle. I mean, like I watched that episode today. Like I'm still feeling it. Was Hale's. Absolutely 100%. That one hit me the most. It hit me the most in the heart. Like, I mean, I was behind, so I was watching it while trying to work and take calls at the same time, and I had to step away from my phone for a second because I mean I was just like that emotionally like affected by that. And I think that really, and I always say it Kenzie, and I don't know if that's how you say the actress's name. I'm not Kevin.
It's
Ksenia.
Ksenia. Okay, because yeah, I'm bad with names to begin with, but her power of acting really showed in that scene because yes, Hale, we loved Hale. Hale was like this funny guy, and we loved finally seeing him and Kenzie get together and everything else, but her, like the heart-wrenching part of it, like that was like the Oscar-winning performance for me. Like right there was, and that was like, even though that was my least favorite episode of the season because the people eating, it was also the most heart-wrenching and I thought the most well done part of it. So I guess for me, I don't know if it's surprising death, but it was the most shocking death, like, because it shocked me so much that, like, it brought me back to deaths that I've had in my family and very traumatic deaths in my family enough to affect me like that. So that's why.
Well, and Renita said it was like Crowley's death, which I'm assuming you mean, Renita, that you are comparing Crowley's to what Kenzie did. I'm
Mhm.
kind of I'm thinking that must be, and she did say that Hales was the most surprising to her. Now, a couple of you have said kind of my feelings about this, or my reactions to it, and I don't usually answer my own questions, but in this case, I'm going to talk about it a little bit because it's such an important aspect of this particular season that I agree that to me, Hale's death that was just completely shocking to me. In retrospect, the couple of times that I've watched the show, that I've seen the episodes or the season since, it occurred to me, oh yeah, there's some foreshadowing about this. There are a couple of times where Kenzie tells him, oh, we've got all the time in the world, and there's stuff like that, and it
Patterning.
could have been. But when it happened, it completely just came out. To me, it came out of left field at the time, and I, that's the one that Kevin had to kind of talk me down from, and then the other one, I will agree. Now that one I saw coming through that episode anyway.
Mhm. It just builds
Especially
all the
once
way
she
up.
said,
Oh,
and like when they're reading, her and Tamlin are reading the book, and she's like, "Well, let's maybe not tell Bo about
right.
that."
You can see the look on their face. Yeah, as soon
Yeah.
as she hears what the translation is, but to me, that was more sad. Yeah, I mean there was
Oh,
no way that wasn't sad. Not only because you're losing a great character, but also uh, the reactions of everyone else, to it. I mean, everybody that between Dyson and Bo's reaction. But I want to ask us about Trick, because I think Trick knew it was going to happen, and I didn't catch that before this rewatch. But then also when Tamsin goes and takes her to Valhalla, that was great.
Well,
But
her reaction, like her, like her, because she's like the first one you hear her reaction, like it's like the immediate sorrow, at least for me, and that's what I noticed.
well, they even kind of showed them reacting, but no noise. Like you could see
yeah,
Dyson had to be yelling, but we didn't hear him.
and
Right.
that's
And
and
that's
that
slightly, not even slow-mo, but slightly slower and but no sound, and which just made
right.
it even kind of more hurtful,
Mhm.
dramatic.
Well, and it's kind of, but it also resembled when Kenzie tried to warn Hale that
Mhm.
Maslow was standing up, and she, we can hear her, we can see her talking to him and saying, "Hale, watch out," or "Look out," or she's saying something, but we can't hear it. There's no sound.
Mhm.
So, that was similar to me with the way that they handled that. But yeah, as I said, it didn't occur to me until this rewatch of the episode that it seemed to me as though Trick actually had figured it out too.
Huh.
And that because it was when he and Ebony were talking, Yeah, we didn't even talk about her, but what can you say about her? Or what can't you say about her is more like it.
She's a bad
We got
woman.
more Ebony. I wanted more Ebony. We got more Ebony
Yeah.
this season.
And she said something in French, and he translated it, and it's the something about the smallest casting the longest shadow or something like that. It was, and so from that, and then there was another time where he made a comment about destiny, and he's just kind of, when he sees Kenzie walking to the portal, he does not look surprised. Whereas both Bo and Dyson are just like, so I'm just throwing that out there as food for thought, that I have a feeling that maybe, and I don't remember that occurring to me before, but it did this time. So we may come back to that, but, and we've talked at length about those, the fact that it was a finale, because you have these deaths. It's sort of a 3-parter and all of that. But I also want to kind of incorporate a little bit for our last question here, about the Wanderer and Rayner. A couple of people said, well, that wasn't explained really. And so I wanted to find out kind of what was your take on all of that. Number one, did you find aside from the fact that we lost some beloved characters, did you find the finale to be a satisfying end to the season? And but did you also feel as though enough of an explanation was made about what was going on with the Wanderer and Rayner and all of that? And Marks, it's your turn to go first.
No.
No.
No, I didn't. I do feel like it was a little confusing. They need another episode maybe to explore that perhaps. We didn't get enough of him to really feel like there was a reason for Bo to like him so much. Like it seemed like it must have been a spell, but I guess not, because it never wore off, right? So it just,
Maybe he had a magic organ.
yeah, I mean, there just wasn't the same chemistry there as she had with other people, and she threw away, Dyson and Laura for him pretty quick. So we really needed a good, solid episode to make us see that relationship and fall for it, and they didn't do that. And then also logically it doesn't make a lot of sense, because I'm just trying to think, well, how did Opera Center get on the train? He's supposed to be in prison, but he's running all this stuff around. This is the worst prison ever.
Turning up, yeah.
So there's some confusing bits there that I don't quite, I feel like aren't quite piecing together, which is unfortunate, because they built up so well. But once she remembered things and was like, "Oh yeah, that's right, I love him," and stuff, it just was like, "What?" And
yeah,
I was waiting for them to explain it and make sense to me, and I don't think it ever quite made it. So anyway, because when he got killed, I was just like, "Oh well, bye." And
they've been telling us he's been not gonna die for like the last episode and a half. So
yeah. So anyway, yeah, and the actor seemed fine, and I've seen him in other. Apparently that show, actually, I forgot. I think he's on Being Human too.
Yeah, he wasn't Being Human.
Yeah, I remember him being good
several
in that,
episodes.
so.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, I think they could have. Maybe they were just trying to pack too much into 13 episodes. Maybe this would have been a season that they needed a few more of those episodes. Like
they needed a season 2 episode.
They needed to spread them out, or
this
divide
one
them
would
in
have
half.
deserved it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Carol.
I totally agree that we really never understood how he got to be so important to her, that that she just gives up everything for him and does all this stuff. I liked the flashback where we see him being a rebel and how he became the Wanderer. I did like that part. But then the other thing that didn't make sense for me was all the foreshadowing we were getting from season 3 about the Wanderer was like he was going to be a big bad or something. And then when we meet him, it was like, well, he's a guy. Oh, okay. Like, where was the big bad part? Like I was expecting him to be, judging by the way everybody was like, oh, the Wanderer. I thought, oh, he's really going to do something. And he didn't to me. So those two factors both were like, made him to me underwhelming. And so I would have needed something more to clarify why this was. And I'll tell you what, so at the beginning, I watched Lost Girl so long ago, the one time I watched it, that season 4 was completely new to me. I might as well have never seen it at all because I didn't know anything.
So you got shocked all over again.
Well, and I had one horrible moment when I thought the Wanderer was going to be her dad. And then
Well,
I'm
it
like,
almost seemed like they were trying to hint at that last
Yeah,
season.
they were. Yeah, I agree.
right. And so I had this horrible moment. Like, I know that, this is a very inclusive and broad-minded show, but I didn't think they were going to go.
That would be a little too
No,
much.
that was the druid and
Yeah,
Morgan
and I was like,
kissing a little.
what?
A
I was like,
little Luke Leia moment there.
I was like, I don't see how they have Bo sleeping with her father. And so that got cleared up. But, it was the whole, they had this great buildup, underwhelming finish. And why on earth was she so madly in love with him?
Okay. Sarah Rose.
Okay. 2 comments. Carol, when you said the magic organ, I thought it was kind of ironic because he had an organ, like, on the train. And then the magic organ, I wanted to say, which organ are we talking about here? But no, family friendly. But the other thing is like, on the subject of him being her dad, like I felt like that's what they were kind of leading up to, and they kind of hinted at that throughout the season. I think the reason they were hinting at that was because he is forgotten, and so like the story like of the Wanderer, kind of like his legend kind of got intermixed with Bo's actual dad, because like we had that whole moment of, well, this is Rayner, this is the Wanderer, like when he shows up in the book, like his picture, and Tamlin's like, that's not my boss, like, because like I think they were trying to like establish like they kind of got in our
They were
mix.
getting too intertwined, and they wanted
Yeah,
to make sure they
yeah,
weren't.
exactly. As far as the story, I mean, I've already said I really feel like they could have had another, like, at least 1, if not 2 episodes in this season to really make us care about Rayner, because I really wanted to understand why Bo did what she did. Like, I wanted to see that judgment making a little bit more in the storyline. And I think that affected the Wanderer storyline quite a bit, because I felt like, well, it kind of was a letdown, not because I thought like it wasn't like an interesting idea, but because I thought it was a kind of a really cool idea of this guy, like, and he's been forgotten, and like he's been on this train, and he's like, kind of like the beast in the castle, kind of a, a trope there. But my issue with his storyline just comes down to, we don't understand why on Bo's end, and so it felt unsatisfying to me.
Okay.
In the season as a whole, I don't have a problem with him not being a big bad. Actually, I kind of like that he wasn't the big bad, because it made my patterning brain think, oh, okay, because I was expecting him to be the big bad. I kind of like that he wasn't. But it felt like, they rushed the actual development of him and Bo's story, and that ultimately is what left it lacking, in my opinion. So
Okay. All right, Kevin, bring us home. Mm.
Well, I think I'm very much aligned with what everyone else has said. I remember for me as a viewer the first time watching it, when it's happening live, and feeling like, I think I missed something, or I'm not sure how that all kind of came together. And then I'm like, that's probably me. I'm probably too focused on Bo and Kenzie's relationship. I'm not paying enough attention. And then in subsequent rewatches, I'm like, no, I was paying full attention. There's stuff missing here. And I don't like to be negative on shows I love, but yeah, the Wanderer Rainer stuff was not the show at its best, I'm afraid. It just didn't quite, for all the reasons everybody's mentioned, not enough time, or too far coming out of left field, whatever it might have been. It just didn't quite come together. I'm sure as fully as the writers might have hoped it did. So, that happens sometimes. Let's face it, go back and talk about Adam from Buffy. Sometimes ideas just don't quite work as well as they might have on paper. You never know how it's going to kind of go.
I totally thought I missed something. Like, I went back and watching it, and I went back like to the couple of episodes and rewatched them, even thinking like, I'm watching on the CW, so it has commercials, and I try to, it's like the old days, snack, that kind of thing. And I'm like, did I miss maybe a segment of conversation or something? Did I miss a little snippet here and there? No. It just didn't gel.
It wasn't quite there. No. And, a little off topic, but real quick. It was, for me as a fan, I've been going to DragonCon now almost 20 years, had a ton of amazing experiences with the celebrity guests. But Kenzie is one of my all-time favorite characters, and Ksenia, one of my all-time favorite actresses. In an unusual way, DragonCon announced her as a guest in December of 2013, almost 9 months before the convention, which was very early for them. I was very excited to get a chance to meet her for the first time. This episode, Dark Horse, aired 2 months later. So I then had 7 months to wait to get to meet her. 7 months every day checking to make sure she didn't have to cancel or something hadn't changed. So I was like second in line to see her on the very first day of con. So, and I had one of the most wonderful experiences I've ever had with a guest, talking about the work she did in this episode, how much I loved her character, and she was a total sweetheart. And I've got an even better story to share someday aside from that. But I'm just, as a fan, it was wonderful to get a chance to say how much you impacted me, what a great job you did. So the timing of that was just, as a fan, pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Can we just take like 10 seconds to just appreciate the incredibly beautiful way we got to see her cross that crowded cave with the fighting swirling around her?
The cinematography was amazing in that episode.
We see Dyson and everybody fighting, and Trick's out there with his bow staff, and she's just, in her amazing boots, because she always had amazing boots on, calmly just walking towards, her destiny, and ascending the steps and turning to look at everybody. That was breathtakingly beautiful. Just breathtakingly beautiful. And I know Marks will understand when I'm like, it's like Buffy standing at the edge of
at the end of the platform.
That's right, completely. And
Well,
you have
Buffy too. Don't get me wrong. I'm just giving
no, I
hard.
know.
I didn't mention Buffy this time.
Moment where she's, she's illuminated. She's standing in that huge beacon of light, and she looks back, and you see how much she loves them. And then they're realizing, I mean, I'm sorry, I just had to gush about that because it
was very well done. And I would not be surprised if by this season, as I recall, Emily Andress was showrunner. Is that correct, Kevin?
I believe this was her last season as showrunner, and she wrote the finale.
Okay. I thought that Michelle Lovretta was for the first 3, and then Emily was this season.
I think Emily, I think Emily was for 3 and 4, and Michelle was on 1 and 2.
Oh, okay. That's why. Okay. I had given Michelle an extra one. And so she was, but she has made it quite clear and has told Kevin personally, who passed it on to me. I don't remember if she and I spoke about it directly or not, but she's a huge Buffy fan herself. Emily Andrus is, so she was probably a bit inspired by that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it certainly worked. I mean, it was really well done.
Yeah.
I do
And
before
it was just so great because you're losing this major character, as Kevin says, the heart of the show in so many ways. And they didn't skimp. She
No.
got all the dignity and all the majesty of it. And, you know, you just don't often see characters that important get their final scene with that kind of beauty and dignity. And it was just incredible.
And that's
Well, now we
actually
need to
that's
choose.
actually why I would love to see some of the production people like come to some of these conventions. Not like I love the celebrities, don't get me wrong, but like I'd love to pick like some of the writers' brains about why they made choices like Hale and the blood and like did Trick know, which yes, I think Trick knew. And
I will
you
ask
know,
Rick Howland if he ever comes back. He's been
yes,
maybe
for sure. But you know, those are the like and the cinematography and that kind of those choices, those are the kind of things my detailed oriented brain would love to pick people's minds apart and about. And like the actors are great, but sometimes the actors don't know the answers to those questions. But you sure better believe like the writers do. And like for me, like the question that overhangs this season is, was there supposed to be more episodes and they had to cut
I
somewhere
don't
in
think
that
so. I
play?
think it was set up as a 13 episode season. And I will say that we did have the last time that the Lost Girl cast came, we had like 9 of
Everyone.
them.
Everyone.
Yeah, pretty much
You
everyone.
had the
last year,
Ebony's character. I remember her auctioning off a bra. That's what
yeah,
stood
well,
out for me.
don't talk about it. But anyway, what the but we actually had Jay Firestone, who was one of the producers on the show.
wow.
Okay.
Long
came,
running cruise. Yep.
yeah, and he was he was involved with Dark Matter, so he was there kind of to do double duty. But that happened, and we have had Emily Andrus before, and she, you know, mainly in her capacity with Winona Earp, but still so that does happen occasionally. Now I do want to share this comment that Renita made about the added sadness of Hale's death was the fact that he and Kenzie were finally together, and then this happens. And yeah, you know they're not going to let them stay happy, right? I mean, that's the thing. But they get that it's anyway. It was a tough last few episodes, and it was funny because when I was doing the rewatch of this season and I was kind of looking ahead, I thought, I wonder, you know, I didn't remember which episode it was that it happened in until it got to a little bit closer. I've got the DVDs. So on the DVD, when it said the end of a line, I was like, oh, that's it. That's got to be the episode, you know, in which it happens. But it had a lot of impact, and it just goes to show you that for a show to have that much impact on us, you know, how well done it was. So anyway, but I think that we will have to prepare ourselves for season 5 for next month. Everybody get ready. I want to thank you, my wonderful panelists, for being here tonight and taking your time. Renita, as always, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thanks to everyone who watches this, whether you watch it while we're doing it or you watch it later on at your convenience. And we will be doing the final season next month at the end of April sometime. I'm not exactly sure. We haven't picked a date yet, but it will be at the end of the month, and we will then discuss the show as a whole and how it has affected us. And obviously, if it still bothers us that we have to watch these scenes, the ones we've seen before more than once, we will just hang in there and be tough. And here, Renita says, thank you. And Renita, thank you. You're very kind, and we always appreciate your input. And everyone, thank you. I appreciate all of you. And until next time, we'll say good night.
Take care, all.
Bye.
Good night.